Into the Norwegian Sea. Prior to its planned attack on Norway, the Soviet Stavka has ordered the Red Banner Northern Fleet to sortie from its bases in the Kola Peninsula to clear the Norwegian Sea of NATO warships. Following this operation, the Soviet fleet has been directed to prevent the reinforcement of Norway by interdicting NATO shipping lanes. 6 attack submarines will participate in the initial sweep down the Norwegian coast. In addition, a strong Soviet battle group has formed at Murmansk to support this operation. Included in this force, a large force of Soviet naval aircraft has also been ordered to support the operation from airfields within the Kola. Included in this force is a full regiment of T-16 Badger strike aircraft, a squadron of MiG-23 Flogger interceptors, and a squadron of Su-27 flanker fighter bombers. The Soviet offensive has come as a complete surprise to NATO forces. Only a small Norwegian standing force consisting of a handful of Hawk-class patrol boats, 2 frigates, and a single submarine will be able to contest the Soviets initially. Scalant is moving 3 nuclear attack submarines to the area with orders to initiate ASW operations against Soviet submarines. Also, 333 Squadron of the Royal Norwegian Air Force is currently operating several P-3 Orions from its airfields in northern Norway. Norwegian F-16 fighters have been ordered to fly continuous patrols over North Norway to protect NATO shipping and to engage Soviet aircraft attempting to attack the critical Norwegian airfields. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Second Fleet, a blast from the past, published by Victory Games back in 1986. Back in the day, Victory Games published not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 different games, each featuring a different fleet area for NATO and or the United States, all of which were confronting various Soviet forces. Today, I will bring you a demonstration of how one of these games works, and this time will be Second Fleet, which focuses on the north part of the Atlantic Ocean, which ranges from the Kola Peninsula area in the north all the way down to Scotland and the SOSUS line stretching from Greenland to Iceland to Norway. This particular scenario focuses exclusively on the northern map, where we have the battle for Norway just getting underway. This, the first and smallest of the intermediate game scenarios, is 6 turns in length. Days consist of 3 turns, an AM turn, a PM turn, and a nighttime turn. However, don't equate that with light and dark. In the advanced game, depending on the time of year the scenario is happening in, you could have AM turns being dark, for example. So that's something that's handled in the advanced game. We're not going to deal with it. All we need to know is that we have 3 turns that compose the day. Now, at the beginning of the AM turn, there is what's called a strategic cycle. And those are things that are at higher level concepts that don't have to happen on each and every turn. So let's start with that, because that is the first thing we do. The first thing is the political events phase. The NATO player rolls a die and players consult the armistice table, not on turn 1. Well, this is an advanced game concept, so we don't have to deal with that. Second, weather phase. Also an advanced game feature, so we're not going to deal with that, but it's another die roll and table lookup that we don't have to worry about that could result in squalls or storms in the various strategic areas of the map. Third, a reinforcement phase, also an advanced game concept. You can have additional units come on the map. This would be controlled by, again, random dice rolls that happen during the course of the advanced game, but only at the head of the AM turn, so once every 3 turns. Then there's submarine mode, also in an advanced game concept. Submarines could be placed deep or shallow, so it's kind of simulating what's referred to as the layer. If you are into any of the submarine games, especially on the computer, they talk about the layer. Well, this is how you have it represented in this game. A submarine can go deep, presumably that means it's below the layer or above the layer, but that, again, is an advanced game concept that we don't need to deal with. But what we do need to deal with is the strategic air phase that is within this strategic cycle. At the beginning of each game day, again, that's 3 turns, aircraft are allocated to strategic tasks. What that will do is exert control or perform actions in these strategic zones that are on the map. So this area here is the Barents Sea zone. Over here we have the Svalbard zone. Down here is Greenland Sea Zone, or down here, this is the Norwegian Sea Zone. And so each of those is clearly delineated and outlined on the map, and is also represented by a strategic box elsewhere on the map where you're going to fly strategic air missions. So the first thing that happens is an allocation segment where players will go ahead and allocate aircraft from their bases. So say from over here, from over there, from their air bases, and put them into their strategic box in the area they want to exert their control and perform their mission. Or they can stay on the map for doing tactical things during the turns. This decision is only available to you right now once every 3 turns. All right. Now, this is the only place where there's a solitaire unfriendly rule. Okay. The regular game has players secretly allocate their aircraft to these strategic boxes and to strategic missions. However, there's a very good solitaire rule, and actually I kind of like it. I wouldn't mind using the solitaire rule for an opposed game. It actually is kind of cool, I think, where you roll dice. You roll a single 10-sided die, and on an even result, the NATO player gets to allocate 1 aircraft. And on an odd result, the Soviets get to allocate 1 aircraft, with one exception. On the roll of a 9, this process ends. The only exception to that is that you have to have had 4 units placed. Now, given the Vegarities dice rolls, they could all have been placed by one side. Unlikely, but possible. But that is one way this allocation can end, or by mutual agreement. Both players say, I've done enough. Okay, so we're going to start with die rolls to determine who is going to put their air assets into strategic boxes. And here we have the Soviet strategic boxes. Each one of these color-coded boxes corresponds to a strategic zone on the game map. So we had looked at the Barents Sea zone, and the Barents Sea zone is British Isles, Iceland, North Atlantic, Labrador, Svalbard, Greenland. Well, there's the Barents Sea. So there's the Barents Sea is the pink guys. Okay, so a lot of the fight is going to be over that zone. So I would expect aircraft to be showing up there. All right, just for the sake of ease of camera use, I'm going to put both NATO and the Soviets in this section. I'll separate them out, put NATO over where they should be later, but for the purpose of having sane camera work, I'm going to put everybody here. All right, first die roll. First die roll is odd. That means a Soviet gets to place a unit. They get the first shot at this. And I'm going to start with this Russian recon plane. I believe it's a Bear. Looks like a T-16D. I believe that's a Bear bomber, recon plane, whatever. Actually, it is just a recon. It's got no abilities other than a range of 60, and it is a recon aircraft. In this phase, though, the only thing that matters is that the 60 movement points, according to the range of air units on strategic missions table, will allow it to fly out up to 2 strategic zones from where it's based. And it's based on the Kola Peninsula within the Barents Zone. So we could actually fly out 2 zones beyond that. And everything that means anything is only 1 zone away in this scenario. But I think we'll take it conservative, and we will fly this guy into the Barents Zone where the Norwegians have their surface ships. That small amount of surface ships that they got are there. Plus they have their diesel submarine located there. The nukes are all in the Greenland Sea Zone, but I think I'm going to put this one in the Barents. So we go over to the strategic zone, we go to the box that says recon, and we place this recon aircraft on a reconnaissance mission in the Barents Zone. That's the first die. Next one. It's a 7. Another Soviet aircraft goes on a strategery mission. I think the Soviets' best play is to follow this reconnaissance mission up with a interceptor to try to knock down anything that should come up after it. And they have basically three choices. They've got a Su-27, which is good. They've got the MiG-23, which is so-so at best. And then they have the Ak-36, I think it is, on board the Kiev, which is located in the Barents Zone. But that's pretty bad. So I think we're going to go with the Su-27, which is this guy right here. And you see his air-to-air rating is 10. That's what that is. The F-16s, which would be about the only thing that can oppose it, is an 8. So this is better than the F-16s. So we put the Su-27 in the intercept box within the Barents Sea zone. Next die. And it is a 0, so the NATO will get to place their first unit. And NATO elects to place a P-3 Orion in the Greenland Sea zone. That's going to be on a reconnaissance mission in the Greenland Sea zone where we have two Soviet subs, one a nuclear attack sub, the other is a diesel. So the Norwegians place their P-3 Orion within the Greenland Strategic Zone on the recon mission box. All right, next one. I rolled a 6. That will be NATO. So NATO is going to place the Nimrod, which is a UK reconnaissance plane, long range. It can fly out a couple zones, no issues. And it's going to join the P-3 in the Greenland Sea zone. There are two Soviet submarines there. So we're going to try to detect those guys. That's what this is all about. Try to get a detection on both. I don't think we're going to contest the Barents Sea. That Sioux fighter that they have protecting it is stronger than the F-16. So odds are, even if I put the F-16 up over there, it would probably lose that fight. So we're going to put this one in Greenland. We know that the Soviets cannot put any interceptors in Greenland. They don't have the range. So we don't have to worry about protecting these guys. And here's the Nimrod joining the P-3 in the Greenland Sea Zone. All right, we have now placed 4 units. If I roll a 9, it will end this phase, regardless of what the players want to do. And I roll a 9. That's it. That's all she wrote. Okay, that was good. So we have a recon mission, Soviet recon mission, going in the Barents Sea Zone. That could be used against the Norwegian diesel sub or the small fleet of ships that they have there. The diesel sub is going to be a die roll. Diesels are the hardest thing to detect. The surface force, though, is automatic. So maybe that's a smarter play. All right. And then the two recon units that NATO put in the Greenland Sea Zone, they will try to detect the two Soviet subs. We're done with placement within the strategic air phase. Next would be the interception segment. If we had fighters on both sides, they would now shoot it out and see which side came out ahead. And that is followed by the bounce segment. So if we had unescorted missions that were placed out there earlier and either their interceptors have been shot down or forced to go away, or they just didn't have any to begin with, we would go to the bounce segment to try to get rid of the recon planes and such that were placed out there. We go on to the next phase. That is the mine segment. Well, that is an advanced game concept, placing mines, so we don't have to worry about that. Strategic detection segment. Now, you can't shoot at something that if you don't know that it's there, right? You got to see it to shoot it. So in Second Fleet, there are 2 levels of detection. Of course, there's undetected, so I guess there's 3. And then there's local detection and strategic detection. Within a game turn, local and strategic pretty much work the same. They're detected. Okay, you can shoot at them. But the issue is local detection can go away at the end of the turn. A strategic detection stays for the full 3 turns that are the day that you're playing. So when you detect using these recon planes flying at the strategic level, that detection is going to stick for the first 3 turns that are going to be the first day of the game. All right, so what are we going to do? Well, let's see. It's easy for the Soviets. I think I'll go ahead and detect that fleet. All right, so what do we do? So if you look along the Norwegian coast, we have NATO Task Force 3. And if you remember what I had showed you earlier, there are 4 Norwegian vessels there lined up in their task force formation. Because there are at least 4 combat units present, it is a task force and receives maximum defensive benefits. If it had 2 or 3, it would be a task group. There would be fewer defensive benefits. And if it was a lone ship, it gets penalized. So, not good to be alone. And because we're searching for the surface group, detection is automatic. I'm going to place the strategic detection side of this counter on the task force so that we know that they are detected at the strategic level. All right, so that is the one recon plane that the Soviets have up. NATO has 2, okay, and they're in the Greenland Sea Zone. So we'll go ahead and try the nuclear submarine first. This is the nuclear attack submarine Pyotr Pospelov, an Alpha class submarine launched in 1981. And to do this, we need to roll a 5 or less, 0 being low. Roll a 7. So we do not detect the Pyotr Pospelov. Okay. Second, to the right, we have a Foxtrot, the Magnitorsky. Oh, that's easy for me to say. A Foxtrot sub and a Soviet SS has to be detected on a 3 or less. 3 or less. And a roll to 6. So neither of the NATO reconnaissance aircraft successfully detected either submarine. Nothing's detected here. And the final phase of the strategic cycle is the invasion phase, which is also an advanced game concept where you can use Marines, you can use paratroopers or commandos to attempt to capture enemy bases. All right, but we don't have to deal with that. The only thing that they introduced in the immediate game, besides a little bit bigger scenarios to play, is the procedure for attacking bases with aircraft or SSMs. And we may be doing that later because the Soviets get points for knocking out Norwegian bases. So we're on to the activity cycle. All right. So this is where we actually start doing things and ticking off turns. So the first thing in the activity cycle is the cap phase. And in the cap phase, players have the chance to put up cap over their various assets that they have. So, for example, if the Kiev wanted to have its Yak 36's fly cap, which I may just do, now is the time to do it. And this is a turn-by-turn decision, so you, within the 3 turns of the day, you get to make this decision 3 times. It comes up every player turn. Alrighty, so let's say the Yak decides to put up cap. The Soviets do theirs first. Alrighty, so what does that do? So we take a look down here and we see we have Task Force 5 for the Soviets. And that's the task force that has that long string of Soviet units I showed you earlier. One of which is the Kiev that has, and the Kiev has this Yak on board. And so what this Yak is going to do is go into a cap box, cap number 1, and we're going to take this representing cap number 1 and place it over the Kiev's task force. So it now has some protection air to air going out 4 hexes from that point. So during this first turn, they're going to have some level of a little bubble of protection around them. Okay. As far as the others concerned, I don't think the Soviets are worried about getting bombed all that much as far as their surface ships. They're not detected. So, and I don't think the NATO is going to be attacking bases. It's possible, but they don't have any heavy lift bombers, so I don't think so. So Soviets are done. Now NATO gets to respond. And NATO will respond by taking that F-16 aloft and putting it on cap duties. So he gets removed from the map. I just put the tiddlywinks there so I remember what bases are being used by aircraft. And we place cap 1 in that same hex, and the F-16 goes into the cap 1 box, which is off on the side here. A little bit farther to the south, NATO has a UK task force that actually has an aircraft carrier, which is the Illustrious, and they are going to go ahead and place 2 units up in cap. They have their interceptor, which of course is a Sea Harrier, and they have an SKG helicopter. Notice it says it's an AEW, so it's kind of like a mini AWACS. It's aerial early warning, and so this makes the cap more effective. And in this case, we place this side of the cap 2 counter, so I'm calling this cap 2, and it's going to have the cap plus the AEW. And the cap and AEW counter goes right on top of the task force, providing a 4-hex bubble of protection around that task force. And it is a task force. It's got 8 ships in there, all combat ships. Definitely a task force. Next is the minesweeping phase. And again, mines and minesweeping are advanced game concepts. We're playing intermediate rules, so we're going to skip that. Replenishment. Replenishment and just general using up of stores is a optional rule. You would probably only use it in the advanced game, and it is listed as an optional rule, not one that's part and parcel of even the advanced game. The game provides these sheets which show every ship and submarine in the game and how many ammunition stores and or even fuel for non-nuclear vessels, as far as how many shots do they get or how many days they can stay at sea. Notice that the fuel is only done on a daily basis, not a turn basis, but the rest of it, the ammunition, is done on every shot. It'll burn off a box. A lot of times people don't like logistics sort of things, but frankly, I thought that this added a lot to the game when I played it back in the day, and I did not find it to be onerous at all. In fact, I thought it made it to be a better game. So I recommend, once you get familiar with the game, assuming you want to play, is go ahead and try the logistics. You might like it. So that's replenishment. So that can be done at port, or if you have the correct ships in your task force, replenishment ships, you can replenish at sea as well. Local detection. All right. Detection markers are placed on units that qualify for local detection, but we have nobody anywhere near anybody else right now, so there's none of that going to be going on. No local detection right now. We now move on to the meat and potatoes of the game, which is the action phase. The action phase consists of 3 different segments where you're basically doing the same thing. At the beginning of each segment, you roll a die to determine which side is going to go first. After that is determined, then that player decides whether they want to do surface ships, submarines, or air units. You get to do each of those one time during the turn, so that's why there's 3 segments. If you pick submarines in the first segment, you're not going to be able to do them in segment 2 or 3. So we roll the die, evens and odds, even die, NATO is first. So NATO is going to pick their action first for segment 1. I'm going to go with air, okay? And the reason why I want to go with air is because I'd really like to hold back on using the other things. NATO doesn't really have much in terms of aircraft, and what they have are up defensively. So there's not a whole lot for them to do in the air. So we're going to take this and we're going to put it in segment 1. Okay, now I know this says Soviet, but I think I'm just going to use this one for both. Just, again, to keep the camera work sane. All right, they are picked air, and they're not going to do anything. Okay, there's really nothing for them to do. Next, so the Soviets have to pick. And the Soviets are going to select sub. So they're going to use their submarines at this point. None of them are detected, nor have they detected any NATO subs. So they place their marker, and we're going to do Soviet submarines. And we're going to start with these two Soviet submarines that are on the edge of the Greenland Sea Zone, and they want to work their way into the Norwegian Sea Zone to see if they can cause trouble for that UK task force that is hanging back by the coast. Now, if you remember, we had this guy as a nuclear submarine, a nuclear attack submarine, an Alpha. His speed is 4. Now, most nuke subs are 3, so this guy's fast. In addition to that, submarines can exceed that listed speed by 1 point when they choose to, but if they do that, they're automatically strategically detected. So that's a bad thing. We don't want to do that. So we're going to go and do his move of 4. And he's going to go down here deep into the Norwegian Sea, getting closer to the coast, where possibly he could cause trouble for the UK task force. All right. Next, we have a creaky, clanky old Foxtrot with a robust speed of 1. So he's going to creak and clank his 1 hex and see what he can do besides blow up. So that's those subs, but they got more than this. Oh, we're just getting rolling here. And over here in the Barents Sea, we have 4 more Soviet attack submarines, all of which are nuclear attack submarines with speeds of 3. So we have a stack here of 3 and another one hanging back here. Let's go ahead and move all of those. And we went ahead and moved out all of these submarines by 3, spread out the 3 that were in a stack. I didn't see any advantages for having that. And the guy that was hanging back moved as far as he could do. Note that there are some different sea terrains. So this is like open ocean, open water. And this is drift ice, and up here, up in the edge of the board, we have pack ice. And there's also some undersea mountains that could come into play, but not in the intermediate game. Those are advanced game features. So everything is basically open ocean in the intermediate game. So they've moved. Now, there is a detection radius around submarines and surface units of 2 hexes. But since nobody's come within 2 of anybody, we don't have to deal with that right now. So we've got the Soviet submarines done. Next. And it's odd, so it is a Soviet segment going first. And the Soviets will select surface for their second action, basically because they only have 1 task force, and it's not going to get anywhere where it can get hurt. So it's an easy pick. I think we'll save the air till last. All right, and all the ships in the task force have a speed of 4. And so we'll go ahead and move them therefore. And we're going to move them forward to over here. Note that they could have stacked with the submarine. Even if they're stacked, the submarine and the surface ships are living in their own separate worlds. So they don't really interact all that much with each other. And but I've decided to go here just to keep the stacks down. It really doesn't make that much difference this time around. Alrighty, so now NATO gets to select. And recall that we have 2 task forces out there for NATO, one from the UK and the other a Norwegian. Our Norwegians are right here. They have been strategically detected, so they can get shot. So I think their best bet is to stay under the cap envelope of the F-16s, which extends out 4 hexes. I don't think they want to move. They're saying, please don't shoot me, because the Soviets haven't done their aircraft yet. And our UK task force is going to, they've got a movement of 4. I think we're going to stay out of any range that could make us deal with any detection issues. They can go forward and try to skirt around this nuke sub that's on the prowl. So the task force from the United Kingdom moves over to here, and if they move before the Soviet subs in the next turn, they will at least get to free waters, even though they still may have to deal with those submarines at some point. Neither the submarines nor the British task force have been detected, so no shooting. No shooting yet. So then we move on to the third action segment of the turn. I roll the die, see who goes first. It is even, so the NATO goes first. And the NATO has yet to do their submarines. There are 4 of them. And the Norwegian diesel submarine, I think it's just going to move 1. Going to move 1, because that's all it's got, 1, and just close a little bit. It's not going to be effective against submarines. It doesn't have an ASW factor enough to even detect most activity. You need 6. 6 is a magic number for ASW detection, and he don't have it. But he could deal with surface ships, so possibly, if that Soviet force keeps advancing, we'll see. And now the rest of the subs, the 3 nuke boats. Now the question is, do we want to go back and help out that British task force? Maybe that British submarine ought to do that. At least get something over there to help run interference with these subs, because they could cause a problem. So the Trafalgar is going to go right into the detection zone of the Foxtrot sub, the Soviet diesel. Thinking about detection, detection can happen during a game turn. It is not just a strategic phase thing. Around each surface unit and submarine, at range 1, all the way around, there is a limited detection zone. At range 2, around any submarine or surface unit, there is a 2 hex radius called the extended detection zone. And there are some differences, but one of the ways you can get detected is to move hex to hex in either one of those. So if we consider the 2 hex radius around this Foxtrot, when we went blitzing from here, entering here does not trigger that rule, but moving from there to there does. However, submarines act slightly different. If that was a surface unit doing the movement, it would absolutely be detected. But to detect a submarine, you need a combined ASW factor, anti-submarine warfare factor, of the detecting units. It can be more than 1 unit, of at least 6. This Foxtrot has an ASW factor of 3, so by himself he's blind to the Trafalgar. We'll see later the Trafalgar is not blind to the Foxtrot. It's got an ASW factor of 9, as do the American subs too, the Los Angeles classes and all of that. So we got the 2 LA class boats to do. And with these, since nothing's detected, I don't want a chance being detected. I think we'll play loose, because these Soviet subs are dangerous. They can hurt us. All right. So we'll just kind of stay at range 3 and kind of just rearrange ourselves a little bit. And I'm going to end up right here. Okay, so playing it kind of coy, except for the Trafalgar, which was kind of an easy choice to make. And now we're up to the Soviets, who have yet to do their air segment. Now, they do have a fair amount of bombers. We do have a detected surface task force. We could bomb bases, or we could attack the Norwegian task force that is detected, even though it's under the protection of the F-16 cap. So the Soviets have their MiG-23 interceptor. They have a electronics warfare aircraft to help shade the odds a bit in their favor, and we have 2 bomber units, and they're going to be loaded up with surface-to-surface missiles, so we're not going to fly over the top of these targets. We're going to shoot them at range. And these missiles, looking at the counters, have a range of 2. All right, so we need to get within 2 of the NATO task force. We flew around here just to kind of stay out of range of the cap as long as we could. We enter it here, 1, 2, 3, 4. And at that point, the cap has an option of engaging. They only get to engage 1 time during the course of this battle, but they're not going to do that because they know the Russians can't do anything at range 4, or in this case, range 3 to the target. So they know they're going to advance farther. They advance here. They're within range of the target. The cap is going to attack. In the case where cap is on an airbase as opposed to an aircraft carrier, the strength does not get adjusted for range. So if we had engaged at range 4, it's exactly the same as range 3. The F-16s have an air-to-air rating of 8. Then combine all of the Soviet units together and find that they have an air-to-air rating of 10. So the F-16s are attacking at a 1-to-2 ratio. Simple odds calculation on the table and a simple unmodified die roll. 3, 1-to-2 on the cap table of the 3. The attacker aborts. All right, so the F-16s have no effect, but they are not hurt in any way. The cap is knocked down and the raid continues. All right, just for convenience, I've set these units aside so we can talk about this particular attack. One note that I had forgot to apply the EW modifier to the air-to-air roll that we had when the cap attacked these guys. What the EW plane does is reduces the air-to-air factor of the cap by 2 points, but in this case it did not change the odds, so what happened before is still entirely valid through no fault of my own. Now let's talk about the attack against the ships. The EW only affects area anti-air, and these ships are very weak and they have no area anti-air, so the EW is not going to affect this attack against the ships. The first thing that happens is that the ships are rearranged as the defender wishes, because point anti-air can protect the ship that's being attacked, and it can also protect the ship to its left on the track. So ship 2 can protect ship 1, which means the guy who's last in line has potentially less protection than anybody else. In this case, this will be ship 1, 2, 3, 4. This guy stands alone. This guy can help protect this guy to there, this guy to there. All right. The attacker has 90 points of surface-to-surface missiles. Both units are 45 points. He's got 2 of them. We can divide those points up in any way we choose, so we can put all 90 on one boat. And 90 just happens to be the maximum table, 90 or more, so that would just about guarantee blowing up, say, one of these patrol craft, one of these Corvette patrol craft. But I think with 90 points, I would like to do something a little bit more than that. So I think with 90 points, I can go on the 36 to 45 table. So that would give me, I'm using 72 points and have 18 left over. And on the 9 to 14 table twice, which would be kind of convenient. So I could go on the frigates, I'll go 9 to 14, and on the missile corvettes, the patrol craft, we'll do 36s. The next step would be to figure out what is the defense. So since all the ships are getting attacked, you don't count factors twice. So a guy helping his neighbor can't reuse his factor to help himself. So we have a total of 1, 3, 4. We have 6 points of defense. No area anti-air. Everybody's shooting their short range anti-air. So we are on the 6 to 8 table. And see, there would be modifiers for friendly cap if the cap was originating from this hex. So if this guy was sitting on a base, or if this was an aircraft carrier with a cap overhead, there would be modifiers. But there isn't. And besides that, we chased away the F-16s. So the only modifier here is that because these ships are in a task force, they add 2 to their die roll. So we're on the 6 to 8 table, and we're adding 2 to the die roll. And the die roll is an 8. That's a very good roll. Goes to a 10, which is the max result is 11. So that the result is a 5 on the table. That is a massive benefit. 5 points of defense are going to be used in each of these shots. In addition, for SSM combat, if there's no friendly surface unit next to the target, an additional -2 will be applied. So that -5 becomes -7. Well, let's do the easy ones first. We got 2 -7 shots on the frigates. So we'll take the first one over here. And it is a 2. That's a clean miss. And the other frigate, a 1. Another clean miss. Oh boy. Maybe I should have done that single 90 shot, hey? All right, here's on one of the patrol craft. They're identical, so it doesn't matter. So it's going to be -7. Better shot if I get a decent roll. 2. Well, that ain't going to do it. Holy crap. Haven't even scorched the paint yet. All right, last one. And a 0. Oh, it just keeps getting better, don't it? Well, you know, What can you do? All right, so this is a clean whiff. This attack was a whiff. So the defenders rolled massively on their defense roll. The attackers rolled poorly. Nothing worked for the poor Soviets. They have to go home and explain why they couldn't do a darn thing to a bunch of Norwegians. All right, so let me reset all this and we continue. So the ships go back on their task force alignment and the planes went back to the base where they originated from. And we have done all of the action phases in turn one. We remove local detections. We do not have any local detections. And the cap lands, and we do have some of that. And that will terminate turn one. If this was the end of turn three, there's also a termination cycle for the third turn, or the quote night turn, even though it might not be dark at certain times of the year, that will take care of some of the accounting things for logistics and repair and stuff like that. All right, so all we do now is land the cap, and we would be on to turn two. So we have landed the Soviet cap. The cap over the Illustrious has landed, and our F-16s have narrowly survived their first encounter with the MiGs. Turn two. All right, so now we're beginning the second turn. Now remember what I said about the strategic cycle. That happens before AM turns only, and we're now starting the afternoon turn of the first day. So any of that stuff that we did prior to the first turn regarding setting up aircraft into the strategic zones and all of that, we don't do here. So we go right to the activity cycle, which begins with the cap phase. Cap phase, Soviets put up their cap first. The only thing that needs to be done here is that the Soviets put up their Yak fighters aboard the jump jet carrier Kiev to protect their task force as best they can. Next, we do the Allied cap. Note that the Soviets do not put cap over the Kola Peninsula air bases because the Allies simply don't have enough bomber power here for them to worry about. If there were B-52s and the like around, maybe they would do that, but they don't need to do it here. Next, NATO is going to go ahead and put up its cap, and we're going to just repeat what we did last time. The Norwegians put up their F-16s over their air base, and the British task force puts up their jump jets as well as their AEW helicopter to protect their task force as best they can, which is not detected at the moment, so this is kind of precautionary. We continue with the activity cycle with the local detection phase, skipping over anything to do with the advanced game rules, which I mentioned last time through, that I will not repeat here. Okay, the local detection phase. I didn't say much about that in turn one because simply everything was too far away to worry about it. Well, that's no longer the case, so we're going to touch on that right now. All right, we saw the effects of strategic detection during the strategic cycle. Tactical is different. How do we detect things locally? Well, a couple ways. Basically, it has to do with things being close enough in order to do the detection, and in the case of submarines, powerful enough to do the detection. Surface vessels are easy. Either submarines and or surface vessels within 2 hexes of a surface task force puts a local detection on the task force that is being detected. And of course, if it's a surface force doing the detection, it's going to be mutual. Both will be detected locally. For submarines, it works a little differently. For submarines, it's a 1-hex detection zone, and it is required that the total ASW factors of the detecting side has to be 6 or more. It can be more than 1 unit, it can come from more than 1 hex, but the total has to be at least 6 to get a detection down on a unit. So in practice, what does this mean? Well, if we look here, we see that the Soviet sub and the NATO task force are 3 away from each other, no detection. But here, remember, we had the Trafalgar buck up next to this Foxtrot. Now, the Foxtrot only has an ASW factor of 3. By itself, it cannot detect the Trafalgar. But the Trafalgar has a ASW rating of 9. So it can and will detect the Foxtrot. And so we place a local detection marker on the Foxtrot. Notice I like to use the green ones to reflect spotted Soviets and the red ones to detect spotted NATO. I like the contrast, so that's just how I do it. And the Foxtrot is now locally detected. Looking in the Barents Sea zone to the north, we see that we do have a couple units within 3, but they are 2 submarines, and they have to be at range 1 in order to have a chance of doing a local detection during this phase. So no detection there. Up here, we have nobody within range 3. There's no issue. Detection can also occur during the action phase under a few different circumstances, one of which is that if a unit attacks another unit, a local detect can occur should there be an enemy unit within range 1 of the firing unit that survives the attack. So if you attack somebody next to you and you don't kill them, you are going to be local detected. Or should you shoot at a target more distant while a target is at range 1, you will likewise be locally detected. Submarines that exceed their printed speed by 1 are strategically detected. They have that option. Surface units do not have that option, but submarines do. If they overspeed, they will be strategically detected, and that would happen during the action phase when they do their move. Finally, when a unit goes motoring through the 2 hex zone so they can enter it, that's okay. But if they go from hex to hex within the 2 hex zones, or 1 hex zone in the case of submarines, that unit will be locally detected. In the case of submarines, only if you have 6 or more ASW factors doing the detection. So detection, which is required in order to attack a unit, can happen strategically, it can happen during the local detection phase, and it can happen during the action phase under various circumstances. And we now begin the action phase within the action cycle. And as before, we do this with a die roll. We get a 9, which is an odd die roll. Soviets go first. Sometimes this game gives you hard choices. I'm not so sure that the Soviets actually wanted to go first this time. But we do have a sighted task force. We can attack it. Nothing else is visible except for the bases, and I don't think we want to attack bases yet. So, only thing that we can move the ball forward with right now without putting units at risk is to go ahead and do the aircraft. Okay, so the Soviets will do their air first, and they will repeat the attack on the Norwegians that failed last time. So, they met with their political officers for debrief and were lectured as far as the true belief in the state, and so they will go ahead and try it again with renewed vigor. Same aircraft as before. So if you liked it the first time, you will definitely love it the second time. The Soviets will fly from the Kola Peninsula to this hex. They're 2 away from their target. Their missiles have range 2. The cap can go out to range 4. They let them get within missile range, and then they try to stop this madness. All right, so the F-16s are going to try to stop the attack. And as last time, with the assistance of the Soviet electronics warfare aircraft, the odds are going to be 1 to 2. 1 to 2 on this table. Notice the cap table is a little bit better than the general interception table, so cap have a small advantage. It's going to be rolled on this 1 to 2 table to see what happens. No die roll modifiers. All right, here goes the cap, the F-16s. They roll a 9, which is probably good. Let's see. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. The Soviets take 2 steps hit, and they abort their attack. Step losses are taken by the side that owns the unit, so the Soviets get to choose where these 2 steps of losses go. Almost every unit has 2 steps. In this case, it doesn't matter ships or aircraft or subs. Doesn't matter. Almost all of them, except for the very weakest, have 2 steps. So in this case, they all have 2 steps. The last thing we want to do is take damage to the bombers, and we probably don't want to take damage to these interceptors. I think this EW aircraft is going to take it in the neck and go ahead and take 2 steps and go away. In addition, this attack is aborted. It goes back to the Kola, and once again, the Soviet strike force has to explain what happened to their political masters. The Soviets RTB, and the F-16 Cap was not harmed, so they're still up there orbiting around their air base and protecting the Norwegian fleet. So far, the Soviet Air Force hasn't done too good. Alrighty, so we're done with this. We're going to go and let NATO decide what they want to do. For their part, I think NATO is going to pick air, okay? And it's not that they can do much. They are not strong in the air. What they have has been allocated to CAP or to strategic missions at the beginning of the day. So they don't have a lot of tactical possibilities for aircraft attack. There's only one target sighted, that would be the Foxtrot sub. Be tempting to go ahead and do the submarines at this point for them. And they could attack that Foxtrot, but they will have that opportunity later. That Foxtrot is not going to get away. The Trafalgar is much faster than the diesel sub. And if you didn't notice, when we did the local detection, there was no die roll involved in that. The die roll to detect submarines only comes into play during strategic detection at the head of the day. It does not come into play when you're doing local detection. So NATO is going to do an air activation, and we mark it as follows. And it's a no-op. They're not going to fly any air missions during their air phase. They don't really have anything. Everything's defensive right now. So we roll the die. And we get odd. All right, so the Soviets are going to have to go again. Again, maybe not what they wanted to do. And the Soviets are going to detect a surface action segment for their powerful surface group. And you might ask, gee, Paul, why would you do the surface groups? Aren't they the most vulnerable? And yeah, they kind of are, but I think the Soviets have an option here. Their fleet is in this hex. And remember, if you go motoring through, but not into a detection zone of a surface or submarine, which goes out 2 hexes, during your move, you can be locally detected if you don't get rid of anything that's adjacent to you by the end of your turn. And remember that you can get detected. On the surface, it doesn't have any requirements for how strong the unit is. If you motor from one hex to another within the detection radius of a unit, you will be detected. In this case, what we want to do is to go from here, bringing our cap width, to there. So we're going to go on top of that submarine. Those two live in 2 different worlds. The submarine and the surface group live in 2 different worlds. They really don't affect each other. Now, we did come within a 2 hex radius of this Norwegian diesel sub, but we did not move hex to hex. Because we did not move hex to hex, they are not detected. Now, one thing about the Soviets, I mean, they got advantages and disadvantages. And one of their advantages is long-range missiles on their ships. And while some of them are shorter range, they do have some longer range ones. And while there are some shorter range missiles in this task force, we do have the Kiev, which goes out to range 6 with 12. That is their jump jet carrier, and the Soviets made sure their jump jet carriers could carry a bunch of missiles and other things too. They were more well-rounded ship than we think of for an aircraft carrier. We have the Firenze, pardon my pronunciation if you're Russian, which is a sister ship to the Kirov. So that is a battle cruiser with 14 going out to range 6. We have the Tula, which is another 12 at range 6. And we have the Sevastopol with 10. I believe the Sevastopol is a sister ship to the Moskva, which the Ukrainians dispatched during their conflict with the Russians. All right, so we have 48 total points, and unlike before, I think I'm going to load up on somebody. Enough of this dilly-dallying. I'm going to see if I can take out one of these patrol craft. And the first thing that happens prior to the attack is that the defender gets to reorder their ships within their task force any way they want to, and I kept the same orders. So we have the first ship being a patrol craft, then a frigate, then a patrol craft. Tail end Charlie is a frigate. He will be the least protected. Each of the patrol craft has a 1-point defense for close defense. The frigates have 2, and there is no area. So everything is local. And unlike last time, I'm going to concentrate on one of the patrol craft to minimize the defense. Notice that the table runs 46 to 57. I have 2 points left over. I'm just not going to use them because I don't want to pull in more local defense. So it's all going to go on this guy right here, patrol craft, with a 48 points coming in on him. First thing that happens is that he gets to roll for defense. That will be on the 3 to 5 table. And because the defenders are in task force, they will add 2 to the die roll, not to the result, only to the die roll. We roll, and we roll a 6, which is still good, but not quite as good as last time. And off with a result of 8, we have a 4-point of defense, which is one less than last time. On the attacker side, they're on the 46 to 57 table. And because they are firing at a range greater than 1 and there are no surface units next to the defender, we're going to go ahead and modify the die roll by -2, which is effectively -6 overall, because the defense is going to subtract 4. And we roll, and we roll a 7. So the attacker roll is a 1. And that's a 3-point hit. And these patrol craft are they're very small. That 2 is the defense. The way these things work, again, these are 2-step units. When a unit takes at least half of its defense, but not up to the defensive level, it takes 1 step. If it takes its level or more, its defensive rating or more, it's dead. So the Soviets sink this patrol craft with long-range missiles. And because this cap was not with the defenders, such as with an aircraft carrier, or if they were physically stacked in that base, the cap has no effect on this. Sometimes the cap can be of some assistance for incoming missiles, but not in this case. And because they lost 1 ship, they went from 4 to 3. The Norwegians are no longer a task force, but instead are a task group, which will no longer get that +2 benefit for them when they roll for their own defense. So their defense got weaker, and they lost a significant attacking unit out of this deal. All right, the Soviets remain undetected. And now NATO gets to pick its second action of the turn. The choice is between submarines and surface units, their air units having already gone. If they pick submarines, then they are committed for the turn. And the issue is all these Soviet submarines have more freedom of action. We want to try to get them next to us. If they do that, we might get a local detection on them during their action and then get to shoot at them in our third activation of the turn if we keep our submarines unused. The Trafalgar is going to catch up and shoot at this Foxtrot, so that's kind of irrelevant. So they're going to do surface. And they have an interesting choice here because the Norwegians, the frigates are only speed 3, but the patrol craft, one of which was just sunk, has a speed of 5, and none of the Norwegians have more than range 1 with their missiles, so they're very short range. But when you count it out, 1, 2, 3, 4, they can get within range of 1 of these Soviets. So the question is, do we want to keep the fleet in being, or do we want to split off this one patrol craft and see what we can do with trying to get a hit on these Soviets? So when I count this up, the Soviets have 6, that's 14, 18, 22, 26, 28 points of area defense. This is a strong fleet. And the weakest ship they could shoot at would be Tail End Charlie, so that would add in another 6 of local. 34 points with only 25 points going in. I'm dubious that that would do anything. It would probably be putting them out there just to have something bad happen to him. Probably the submarines would go and sink him. Something, yes, because he would be detected. The submarines could go out and attack him and put him out of his misery. So I think the Norwegians are just going to stay there and take it. But they're not going to go out there with one ship and pray, spray and pray with one ship. Not against this fleet. It wouldn't do anything. Do we want to move it farther away? I suppose we could. It won't get them out of aircraft range, so I don't know. I think these Norwegians are going to go away regardless, pretty much. All right, I'll do that. I'll move the Norwegians back because I think having lost half of their strength effectively is going to not be good for them. So this Norwegian fleet is going to go 1, 2, 3. All the ships in there can go at least 3. And then we have the British, and they're happy to go before this submarine, so it's not going to be forced to go motoring through their detection zone. They're still 3 away, and they will remain 3 away. And all the ships in the United Kingdom Task Force have a speed of 4. So, see, staying outside of this detection zone that the Soviets have, we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. Not going to the coastal hexes. Those are fjord hexes. They do strange things. And they are not detected when they make that move. All right, so the NATO surface segment is done. And in the third and final action phase, we roll odd. So the Soviets have been going first every time. Good for them. They have their submarines going. All right. Again, well, if things were detected, that might be good, but it's just kind of icky overall. Well, the Foxtrot goes 1. So what the heck? We're going to move that guy 1. All right, so I think the Soviet subs are going to do as follows. They have speed 3. 1, 2, 3. He's going to go motoring past this Norwegian diesel, which only has a sub factor of 2, not the 6 that's required, so nothing is spotted. We're going to, I think, maybe just belly up. We've got 2 more here. 1, 2, 3. Time to kind of man up a little bit. 1, 2, 3. Well, that's not going to get us there, but okay. This guy is different. He's an Oscar. He has got anti-ship missiles. He can also do the things that the attack subs can do as far as attacking submarines. But in addition, he can shoot 5 hexes from the looks of it and hit surface vessels. We don't want to run the gauntlet with him. Let's go ahead. 1, 2, 3. Just stick them out here. And anybody else? No. Okay. So we have the 2 Soviet subs that we've been looking at in the Norwegian Sea, and the Barents has 4, 3 attack subs and 1 Oscar, and well, we're starting to get serious about doing something. The Norwegian sub could be in trouble, just like the Foxtrot is in trouble, for the same reason. Alrighty. The Soviets have done their move. The last segment will be NATO submarines. And this time there's only one that's spotted. It's going to be the creaky, clanky Foxtrot. So we're going to go ahead and try to do something to the creaky, clanky Foxtrot. And just kind of go here. And basically firing happens, it's a function of the unit's activation. They can do up to 2 attacks per turn. They can do attack, move, attack, or 2 attacks and move, or move and 2 attacks, but the attacks have to be of a different mode. So we're doing an anti-submarine warfare attack, and we can't do 2 of those because it would be the same mode. So it's going to be 1 ASW attack on the Foxtrot. In this case, the Trafalgar has an ASW factor of 9, and there are no defensive roles in ASW combat, so it's straight on the 9 to 14 table. The Foxtrot has a 6 defense, better than I thought it would be. So it's going to take 3 points of damage to do anything to this guy, which in this case is going to require a die roll of 5 or better. So it's 50-50. 50-50. Here we go. 3. That would be a miss. So the Trafalgar attempted to do something. He did not. Now, this guy is next to him, and he did survive. And in this case, the requirement to having an ASW factor of 6 does not apply. It does not apply when you're being attacked. So attacking is noisy. So the Trafalgar receives a local detection marker for its efforts to try to take out the Foxtrot. And the Trafalgar is detected. Okay, and the Foxtrot is just fine. Thank you very much. All right, so much for being creaky and clanky. Kind of like me, like when I get up in the morning. All righty. That is the end of the third and final action phase of the second turn. The last thing to do is to land cap. So I think this is a good time to stop, and then this was supposed to be a play demonstration, not a full playthrough. I think you can see there's a certain amount of rock, paper, scissors involved here as far as selecting which mode you're going to do versus what your opponent is going to do during the action phases, or even which resources, aircraft you're going to allocate during the strategic segment versus holding them back for the 3 tactical action phases that will follow. And there's a lot to think about. So I've always liked this game, this system. With the advanced game, it gets even more. I mean, when you're talking about taking over territory, taking over bases physically with landings and so forth. This game came out before Red Storm Rising, the Clancy's book, but I think you could probably, if it's not already in here, during the advanced game, you could probably do the Iceland invasion scenario and see how that works out for you. That could be a real interesting thing. But for now, I think this is enough. And if you haven't subscribed already, I would appreciate it. It takes a lot of effort to do these, and having you guys support me with your subscriptions always helps. It makes me know that it's appreciated what I'm doing. But aside from that, this is Paul, the Oak at Night, wishing you a Happy New Year and a very pleasant evening. Bye for now.